Will a political hack handpicked by Pam Bondi and Donald Trump to go after Donald Trump's political enemy, Letitia James, and her office, the New York Attorney General's office, will he survive a new motion that has been brought and will be heard on Thursday before Judge Schofield in New York? I'm not sure about that, especially since Alina Habba got fired today by a 3-judge panel of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals for basically the same problem. The question that's going to be held or answered by Judge Schofield off of a hearing on Thursday is whether John Sarcone, who's a political hack of a first order, going after Letitia James because he was ordered to do so by Pam Bondi, by Donald Trump, by Ed Martin, the head of the Weaponization Committee for the Department of Justice, whether he has the power to issue subpoenas to support a grand jury to investigate whether the New York Attorney General's office, a state law enforcement office, violated the civil rights of Donald Trump because they investigated him for fraud and successfully obtained a judgment of fraud and a monitor. There's still a monitor over the Trump organization watching all of the money flow. It's a former federal judge, Barbara Jones, if all of that violated Donald Trump's civil rights. It starts with that you have a prosecutor who's legitimately appointed, not the self-proclaimed attorney for the Northern District of New York, John Sarcone. That's the issue that's before Judge Schofield this coming Thursday. And now that earlier today, the Third Circuit bounced Alina Habba, I think the job of Judge Schofield just got a lot easier to get rid of John Sarcone. There's a nuance there. This is about quashing subpoenas, not necessarily disqualifying John Sarcone, but it'll go a long way to bouncing him if she declares that he was illegally appointed and therefore has no power. I'm Michael Popok. You're on Legal AF. I'm traveling, but I got to catch up with these stories with you. Hit the free subscribe button here on Legal AF as we continue to grow our pro-democracy channel. Okay, there's a lot going on. It's a great time for a teachable moment about acting attorneys, interim U.S. attorneys, and special attorneys. This is the third judge in the last 5 days that's going to be dealing with the issue of whether Donald Trump appointing somebody as a U.S. attorney in that function in a certain district did it constitutionally or illegally or not. Now, let's back up. Every president, even one named Donald Trump, has the right to his own U.S. attorney for each of the 93 federal districts. Okay? But you got to do it the right way. And there's only 2 ways up the mountain. You either appoint somebody who is acceptable to both Democrats and Republicans and can get through a confirmation process and get that person permanently confirmed as a U.S. attorney, somebody with the stature to be the U.S. attorney. Failing that, and Donald Trump has not bothered to put up anybody that's legitimate, anybody who's qualified. That's why Alina Habba will never become a U.S. attorney fully confirmed or appointed, fully confirmed by the Senate. Neither will Lindsey Halligan. Neither will John Sarcone. So Donald Trump has had to try all these different magic tricks. Well, there's only 2 other ways to get a temporary U.S. attorney, if you will. You can create a interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. The president can pick whoever they want, as long as it's not somebody that was already rejected by the Senate, to serve for one 120-day period under Section 546. That was Lindsey Halligan. The problem is Donald Trump doesn't like that. And when they run out of the 120 days, because they're not getting anybody permanently confirmed in the Senate, they try to do a second interim U.S. attorney, and that violates Section 546. That's what just happened to Lindsey Halligan. Then the only other way is you create what's called a acting U.S. attorney, which can only come out of the Vacancy Reform Act. And that says the only qualified person to be the acting U.S. attorney is the first assistant U.S. attorney under the U.S. attorney and whoever is occupying that chair at the moment of the vacancy. And if Donald Trump doesn't like who that person is, the president can fire that person, but then has to go hunting around in that office itself to find somebody that's been in that office at least a year and at least 90 days in or near that type of office to elevate to first assistant and then to the U.S. attorney, interim U.S. attorney position. Acting U.S. attorney position. That's it. That's the only way. You're either in the office and you were the first assistant or something close to it, or you get a 120-day run and then hope that the judges of the court that you're in, the district that you're in, extend your 120 days. That's what happened in the Southern District of New York, where Jay Clayton, Donald Trump's interim U.S. attorney, had his 120 days expire, but the judges extended it because he's been in that office before. They think he's legitimate. John Sarcone, horse of a different color. Okay? Political hack. In fact, let me show you a clip of John Sarcone in action. Let's play the clip.
I knew this guy was dangerous, I could tell. So rather than just turn and keep walking, I said, let me just go and watch this guy for a little bit. And then as soon as I was there, I didn't even look at him. I was just standing in front of the Hilton looking straight ahead, and he screamed at me, and I don't turn, and he keeps screaming. And then finally, when I saw him walking towards me, I turned. Still didn't say a word, just watching, and then the knife came out, and he went like this, and then charged at me. I mean, it was frightening. And then I ran, got to the lobby. Before I walked in, he was turned around and was walking away, and that's when I called the sheriff, and I went out to the sidewalk to engage him, to keep him in the area, because I knew that someone was going to be severely injured, if not killed, that night.
He also lied a number of times, okay? One thing he lied about is that the judges extended his term after the first 120 days was over, because at first he was the interim U.S. attorney under 546, but the 120 days came and went, and he said, well, the judges extended me. And then it turned out the judges of the Southern District of New York did not extend, or the judges of the Northern District of New York, where he resides, did not extend his time. So he lied about judges extending his time. So then Pam Bondi had to make him the special attorney and try to give him the powers of a U.S. attorney. And that violates the Vacancy Reform Act, because the Vacancy Reform Act is the exclusive method for filling who's going to be the acting U.S. attorney. So he's dead. So he, with this self-proclaimed title, starts issuing subpoenas for a grand jury. Signed, acting U.S. Attorney John Sarcone. So Letitia James's people moved to quash, right, to put out of its misery the subpoenas, arguing that they're invalid and illegitimate because he's invalid and illegitimate. That all gets briefed back in September and October. Now Judge Schofield, who's been assigned the case, she's very interesting. She sits in Manhattan, even though the issues are in the Northern District. They had to take it and send it to the Southern District of New York because there's a conflict of interest, because the judges of the Northern District may have to pick the ultimate U.S. attorney one day. So to avoid the conflict, they sent it downstream to Manhattan for Judge Schofield to take over, much like they did with Judge Curry in Virginia. Now, Judge Schofield is brilliant. There's no other way to put it. She's the first Filipino-American or Filipina-American of either gender to become a U.S. attorney, to become a judge, a federal judge. Hard to believe. Hard to believe. Really well qualified. Was an assistant U.S. attorney, worked at two major law firms. Phenomenal judge, now senior status. She's asked for an oral argument this Thursday just on the issue of whether the subpoena should be quashed because John Sarcone is a phony. I guess that's the right way to put it. So let me read to you from the actual, just a few pages of the actual motion. Now, Letitia James's office, the New York Attorney General's office, brought a motion to dismiss the subpoenas on various grounds, including that they are unduly burdensome and overly broad, violate their First Amendment rights, violate the separation of powers, all sorts of things, violate federalism. But in particular, they bring up that he was illegitimate. And here's what they say about that. The subpoenas were issued without proper authorization. They say the subpoenas are, this is on page 31, are also facially invalid because they were issued at the request of Sarcone in his purported capacity as acting U.S. attorney, a position that he has no authority to hold under 546. They then go through the 546 procedures. After his 120-day period expired, only the federal district court for the relevant district may appoint an interim U.S. attorney. Here, U.S. Attorney General Bondi appointed Sarcone in March 2025 to serve as the interim U.S. attorney for the Northern District of New York. Sarcone told the press that this court appointed him to continue to serve as U.S. attorney after his 120 days expired, but the court had done no such thing. To the contrary, the court declined to exercise the authority granted pursuant to 28 U.S.C. Code 546D to appoint a United States attorney for the Northern District of New York. In the absence of the district attorney approval, Bondi appointed Sarcone as a special attorney, then designated him the first assistant United States attorney. Sarcone has falsely argued that this procedure allows him to continue to serve as acting U.S. attorney. The administration's attempt to circumvent this court's decision by appointing Sarcone a first assistant violates the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. And then they go on and on about that. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. I think that Judge Schofield has a lot of precedent here, or at least persuasive argument made by the Third Circuit Court of Appeals with their new ruling today about Alina Habba to take John Sarcone out of his chair. Now, she'll just rule, I think, that he was not appropriately appointed the acting U.S. attorney because he was not the first assistant U.S. attorney, and therefore his subpoenas are invalid. She may leave it at that and then leave it to other motion practice to be brought to disqualify him once and for all. Once she makes that finding, though, he's as good as cooked. His goose is as good as cooked. So we'll continue to follow it. We're going to have Adam Klasfeld of All Rise News on the ground at the hearing, reporting outside the hearing, and we can do it here with you on Legal AF and update you on this fast-moving story. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.